EV Comply, simplifying your charge point installations.
Hello, you. Another week, another podcast. It's Friday, the 28th of October. And as you know, we often chat to many wonderful guests on our podcast. And this week, I'm actually joined with Gary Frost from EVEC. He is, in fact, the sales manager for the UK. Hey, Gary.
Hi, Chelsea. You all right?
Yes, I'm fine. Thank you. Now, we've actually spoken before, haven't we?
We have. Yes, we have indeed. It was, a while back now, but we certainly have, yeah.
Yeah, it was when you were with Rolac. And obviously we spoke then and you spoke on behalf of them. And now you're with EVEC.
Yeah, that's right. So, was with Rolex for 10 years and then moved across to EVEC in the summer this year. So mid-July sort of time.
I love that. I love an exciting new project. And in this industry, there's so many going on that, it's hard to pick which one to get involved with, isn't it, if anything?
Yeah, there's a lot of charge point manufacturers now in the market. And I guess as with any growing market, that sort of does happen. So, EVEC are owned by a rather large group called For Everyone. They're involved with lots of different appliance manufacturers, so medical refrigeration, domestic kitchen appliances, amongst them, a whole host of other sort of areas. So it's not like it's sort of just, EVEC's just come to the market and, that kind of is the case. But as I say, the group's been doing this for sort of 20 years now. So we're well vetted in sort of, rules and regs and what's required and, how you sort of manufacture electrical products, yeah.
That's great. And EVEC are just kind of approaching things slightly differently, aren't they? So the first thing really that I've noticed with the company is that you're kind of wanting to remove the barriers for EV ownership and you're providing an affordable EV charging solution. That's kind of the brand's punchline, isn't it? So what features do you offer and what price points? Because there's so many out there. It's such a competitive market. So how is it that you're giving that solution?
Yeah, so basically, we offer the same features as all the charge points that are available on the market these days, just because you have to, really. So the rules obviously changed in July, that sort of there had to be a special type of grid connectivity, so like delayed charging and things like that, just so that we don't flood the grid. And once everybody, probably inevitably gets an electric vehicle and a charging point, they're not sort of absolutely draining and sort of killing the sort of electrical supplies to certain areas, towns, cities, whatever it would be. And then that's going to change again in December, and there's some sort of tamper-proof and kind of hacking sort of new regulations as well, which actually EVEC are already meeting that regulation. So in terms of the features, our chargers feature load management, which is again a requirement now. Smart functionality with an app. There's various different ways of looking at the charger. You've got your 16 amps, your 32 amps, single phase and three phase, just dependent on what the vehicle that you have can take. And then there's some socketed versions and some tethered lead versions as well. We're due to release pedestal version any day now, and then we've got some exciting new products coming out in the new year too. So yeah, as far as that goes, everything's compliant well into the new year already. And yeah, the price point, I think the retail price is £400 excluding VAT. So, we do believe that we are the UK's most affordable. And that's from our perspective. We're not trying to sort of, as I mentioned to you earlier, the company's backed by a group that's already, very successful. So there's no sort of need to sort of have massive price points, big margins and that type of thing, and squeeze everybody out of all of their hard-earned money.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, explain more about the Blue Light Card, because that's a discount scheme, isn't it? How does that work at EVEC?
It is. So it's very simple. It is something that we're sort of going to be implementing in a little more detail online. But yeah, basically at the moment, for the purpose of the podcast, at the moment, if you go onto our website and purchase a charger and use the offer code podcast10, then we'll give 10% off on their first order. Yeah, so that's exclusive for today.
Oh, we love that. Okay, so just to reiterate, so if it is that you want to order a charger, so go and type in podcast 10 and then you will get a 10% discount, all because you've just opened your ears and listened to the podcast. I love that.
Fantastic.
That really is brilliant. Now, I've got a real hard question for you, Gary, because I know at EVEC you do work with all different chargers. I want to know that what do you believe makes a good-looking EV charger? Now, this is up for debate because everybody's got a different stance, but what do you think it is?
Some companies will dip charging points or metal, if you like, or they'll have them powder coated. But obviously, then you start sort of going into hundreds and hundreds of pounds worth of cost. And again, as we mentioned, especially in this day and age where everyone's trying to sort of pull back on the old bills a little bit and just be a bit more safe. It's something that's not always going to be at the front of your mind, especially if it's going to cost another £500, let's say. Whereas if you look to just sort of vinyl wrap it, it probably wouldn't come out at any more than maybe £50.
Well, I think we've all at some point, Gary, been on social media and watched a full kitchen being vinyl wrapped. I don't know why. There are so many videos like that.
Yes, totally. Yeah, I've seen lots of things where even certain might be a bicycle or something like that, and they get dipped in all of those different materials, and it comes out looking like carbon fibre. And
it's a very cool, fascinating process, isn't it? But the end result, more to the point, like you say, for such little money in comparison to actually ordering specifically exactly what you want, it's a good solution. Now, what do you think the future of charging looks like in general? I mean, we're going EV, even if we have to drag a few people kicking and screaming, it is happening. So what do you think it looks like, Gary?
Yeah, I think to sort of be absolutely blunt and open with it, you're going to see a lot more of it, quite simply. We've got to move towards more sustainable ways of sort of making the energy, of course, which I'm sure will come to pass. I've seen lots of things, from sort of my time in different technical aspects of companies, and you sort of see that there's things like friction generated charging and things like that, but we live on an island where we should be generating more wave power and wind power and stuff like that, so I'm sure that will happen. But in terms of EV charging itself, you'll see a lot more units pop up. I was out on the road yesterday and there was a big hub up in Hartlepool that had about 150 kilowatt chargers on there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and most vehicles would then sort of charge in up to 80% in 20 minutes to half an hour, so we can literally stop, grab a coffee, jump back in the car. It's almost, not quite, but almost as good as stopping to fill up. Obviously, sometimes you don't get as much, as far in terms of distance because the range isn't there. But, the cars will come out with bigger ranges. There's some that's getting up towards the 350 mile, 400 mile mark now. The cost of the cars will come down, and chargers will get faster, no doubt. If me and you were sort of sat here 20 years ago talking about mobile phones, who would have thought we could FaceTime Australia and write emails from mobile phones? It's
literally, of course.
We would have never said that. So it's definitely going to get there. It's just a matter of time, really, and the technology catching up.
Of course. I mean, it was once a horse and cart, and I'm pretty sure at one time they did try square wheels out of stone. So I do think we've come a very long way. Obviously,
there are still a lot of power stations around the UK that are burning fuel to generate electricity, of course. What it does do for now is it keeps emissions out of towns and cities. So that's just one step to it, of course. So, but yeah, moving forward, we're trying to do our bit, and that's all every company can do.
I think that the argument is really, when people say, oh, an electric car, but where's your electricity coming from? Granted, but the whole point of this climate change action overall is a lot of people doing a little. That's what's wanted, because at the moment we have a lot of people doing nothing at all, or in fact making it worse. So if a lot of people do even just a little, it's got to start making a difference in some sort of movement. And I think that's the point that people seem to miss sometimes. I think they think, like you said, one company should be, if they're going to preach it, 100% sustainable. And it's like, well, that's not physically possible, but we can do all that we can to try and get us to a point where it's as best and as least damaging as we can, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I think so. I think you've only got to look at what happened during lockdown when the more cars were off the road. You saw a lot more sort of greenery, nicer weather, that type of thing. And I think if you picked up every diesel and petrol, combustion engine vehicle and chucked it away and replaced them all with EVs tomorrow, we would all live better. That's not even in question. So it's just moving on from that bit, i.e., as every company, can you recycle a lot more? Can you be greener? Can you do this? Can you do that? And just try and move towards it. So that's where the Cool Earthly and the Cool Earth and the Earthly partnership sort of comes into play. And obviously we sort of work with them to try to sort of help that, especially with things like deforestation. That forests obviously provide good air, and we need that, of course. So, but obviously, ultimately, reducing our company's carbon footprint and create that more sustainable future.
Yeah, no, definitely, and I think it's great that EVAC is doing that. So thank you so much for chatting to me today, Gary. So much going on at EVAC. Just again for the listeners, in case they didn't jot that down earlier, how can they get 10% off ordering a charger through the website again?
As a special offer from this podcast, if they put in the code podcast 10, so podcast and then the number 10, they can get 10% off their first order with us. So
love that. I love that. So if you're after a charger, okay, you can take me for a drink because we've got you 10% off from EVAC if you go online. That is brilliant and very generous of you guys. Thank you so much. We always love a little Brucey bonus for the listener. That's always good. So Gary Frost, thank you so much for talking to me, UK sales manager at EVAC. You have a fantastic day.
Thanks, Chelsea. Good to talk.